The Outer Rim was burning again. A small Republic task force had been deployed above a dry frontier world called Braca Minor, where scattered separatist cells had turned abandoned shipyards into hidden bases. The skies were already filled with smoke as Republic gunships strafed the surface, and droid fighters moved in tight spirals, trying to block reinforcements. The clones on the ground struggled to advance through rusted metal valleys, trapped between collapsing ship hulls and streams of blaster fire. High above them, the battle kept expanding as more ships drifted in from hyperspace. Everything changed when the sky split open. It was not a natural tear, nor a weapon strike, nor a malfunctioning hyperlane. It was a violent wound in reality, a pulsing crack shaped like a jagged claw. Bright light poured out of it in waves that made the droids freeze and the clones shield their helmets. The rupture twisted the clouds and pulled them inward, as if a force was dragging the entire atmosphere toward its center. Alarms echoed across every starship. Sensors failed, droids malfunctioned. Even Jedi stationed in orbit felt the sudden rise of an unknown energy, unlike anything in their experience. Through this swirling wound, a lone figure hurtled downward. His speed was impossible for anything not protected by thick armor or powered by advanced technology. But he wore no protective suit. Only a dark cape flapped behind him as he plummeted. His skin was green, his form was tall, and his eyes were sharp and focused even while falling between worlds. He tried to steady himself with a sharp burst of ki, but the dimensional drag weakened his control. His body shook as gravity and strange cosmic pressure clashed around him. The wind roared across his face. The galaxy rushed closer. He crashed into the old shipyard like a meteor. The force ripped open the deck of a massive scrap barge and sent debris across the entire battlefield. Republic soldiers were thrown backward. Droids toppled like scrap. A massive cloud of dust rose into the sky and blocked the sun for several minutes. When it finally cleared, clones crept forward, their rifles steady. They expected wreckage or fire. Instead, they found a crater at the center of the barge. A tall Namekian stood in that crater. His aura flickered wildly as he tried to correct the disturbance inside his body. The galaxy around him felt wrong. The energy of this place moved in currents he could sense but could not quite touch. It brushed against his ki like a heavy ocean wave pressing down on a swimmer. This pressure made his muscles tighten and slowed the natural flow of power through his veins. He understood immediately that the rupture had thrown him into a foreign dimension where the very energy of life behaved differently. Piccolo scanned the battlefield. He saw armored soldiers, clanking droids, and falling debris. He saw starships firing across the horizon. He saw the wreckage of old craft scattered in twisted fields of metal. This world felt industrial and harsh, filled with chaos created by two sides locked in a long war. He did not know where he had arrived, but he knew this place carried the scent of conflict. He also sensed fear radiating from both sides as they looked upon him. They did not understand what he was. That alone gave him an immediate advantage.
The first shots came from the droids. A group of separatist units marched forward, their sensors resetting after the shockwave. Their programming saw an unknown target in the middle of the battlefield and flagged him as hostile without hesitation. Lines of red blaster bolts shot toward him in perfect formation. Piccolo moved instinctively. His hand flashed outward, catching the first bolt on his palm. The second bolt flew past his shoulder. The third he deflected with a twist of his wrist that sent it spinning into a mound of metal. The clones stared in disbelief as the Green Warrior walked straight through the fire. His movements were fast but smooth, even under the pressure of this strange galaxy. He delivered a single focused ki burst that swept through the droid line like a sudden shockwave. Metal bodies flew apart, components scattered across the deck. Clones scrambled for cover as another wave of energy passed above them. The droids were destroyed in seconds, leaving only smoke and shaking ground. The clones watched with caution rather than relief. Their training told them that unknown forces in war often created more danger than safety. Piccolo could sense their confusion. Their energy felt different than humans he knew, yet close enough for him to understand their fear and discipline. He saw them reposition across the open deck, forming a defensive perimeter around him. He understood that they saw him as a threat. He also understood that these soldiers were not the only ones watching. A Jedi presence approached from behind the line of clones. Piccolo felt something unique from this figure. It was not Ki, but something deeper and wider. It felt like the currents of nature spreading in all directions, yet it also carried tension and conflict. This energy reminded him of the elders on Namek, but it also felt strained, as if tied to an ancient order carrying too many burdens. He sensed power and calmness, but also conflict buried under the surface. The Jedi did not speak. Instead, the Jedi simply observed him, reading his aura, measuring his intentions and searching for answers. Piccolo understood that he had fallen into a galaxy where battles were shaped by a mysterious power. The Jedi did not attack him, and the clones held their ground without firing. The battlefield around them grew quieter as more troops stopped fighting to watch the Green Warrior who had arrived from a tear in the skies. Even Separatist commanders hesitated as their sensors registered an impossible spike in energy from a single life form. The rupture in the sky slowly closed behind the clouds, leaving only fading light and the echo of cosmic wind. Piccolo looked upward and understood that return would not be simple. He took a slow breath, grounding himself in this new reality. The war around him had paused, but he knew it would begin again soon. He also knew that his arrival had changed the balance of this war. The galaxy sensed him, and he sensed it in return. The Clone Wars had gained a new player, one neither side expected and neither side understood. Piccolo had landed in a galaxy shaped by the Force, and the Force itself had taken notice.
Piccolo's arrival in the galaxy rippled outward long before anyone understood what had appeared on Naboo. The Jedi Order first sensed it as a distortion in the Force, something cold, ancient, and coiled with a disciplined aggression that did not resemble the rage or hunger of the dark side. It felt like a predator that did not need to stalk its prey because it already understood the hunt at a deeper level. The disturbance radiated outward from Naboo's forests in waves, each one carrying the unmistakable impression of a colossal willpower wrapped inside a controlled warrior-monk calm. For the Jedi, this was alarming. Few forces in the galaxy could create a tremor that strong without either deep corruption or divine purpose. This one was neither. It was something entirely new. The Order dispatched a trio of knights to investigate, assuming at first that it might be connected to ancient Sith relics, forgotten plagues, or the resurgence of phenomena tied to the Night Sisters. When they reached the landing site, they found only scorched earth and embedded impact lines carved through the forest floor. The crater did not resemble a meteor strike. The ground around it was not shattered, but rather indented, as if something heavy had stopped itself deliberately mid-impact and then stepped out of the hole on its own. Animal tracks surrounded the perimeter, many of them belonging to creatures that lived nowhere near this region. They had been drawn in by instinct, as if pulled toward a new apex on their world's food chain, not in fear, but in a strange primal respect. The Jedi left confused, sensing no direct threat, but unable to categorize the disturbance. They returned to Coruscant to present their findings, unaware that the being they sought was no longer anywhere near the crater. Piccolo had already moved on, covering vast distances with ease, exploring the world with an intensity shaped by Namekian instincts and hardened by years of battle on Earth. He ventured from region to region, analyzing the orbiting trade routes, quietly observing the political currents that flowed between planetary capitals, and learning how this new galaxy functioned without ever showing himself. His cloak served as both camouflage and symbol. He wore it with the same weight he carried during his early contemplations on Earth, when battles were not yet constant and introspection mattered as much as strength. The stars above Naboo felt different from the ones he had known on Namek. They pulsed with a tension that reminded him of ages on Namek, long before its destruction, when the old clans had ruled with discipline, but always prepared for external threats that could arrive without warning. This galaxy had an imbalance. He could feel it without needing the Force. Entire governments seemed ready to collapse under their own weight, while unseen powers manipulated events with surgical precision. Piccolo recognized these patterns because he had lived in a world shaped by tyrants, rebels, and warriors who rose through sheer power. He had battled enemies capable of destroying planets, yet here was a galaxy where entire star systems feared the political maneuvers of a senate. The weakness was structural, it was cultural, it was systemic. And to an outsider like Piccolo, it was almost painfully transparent.
As he mapped out his surroundings, Piccolo noticed small military patrols circling the region, as if searching for something they could not define. They were cautious, but incompetent at detecting someone with his level of concealment. He sensed them long before they passed overhead. More intriguing was the fact that these patrols carried a subtle stiffness in their bearing, a tension he recognized from soldiers who expected an invasion but could not name its source. Someone in power was worried. That meant someone in power had felt his arrival. Piccolo continued studying the world until he sensed a new disturbance, not in the Force, but in the air itself. Something vast moved in the sky above Naboo. Not a ship, not a caravan, a presence, a consciousness. He lifted his head, narrowing his eyes. Across the planet, another figure stood silently on the balcony of a starship cloaked in shadows, watching the same horizon. A tall, robed silhouette with a mask of cold metal and mechanical breath. Darth Vader had felt the disturbance as well. To him, it did not resemble any Jedi signature. It was raw, ancient, and brilliantly focused, like the presence of a warrior forged through unrelenting hardship rather than mysticism. Vader recognized it instantly for what it was, a threat. Not a political one, not a philosophical one, a physical one. The Sith did not fear many beings in the galaxy. This one, however, existed completely outside their domain. It did not bend to the Force, it did not submit to its currents, it did not appear in visions or predictions. That made it dangerous. Vader watched the horizon while calculating probabilities. The Emperor would undoubtedly sense this anomaly as well. Their visions of future control, future domination, and future inevitability did not include an unknown warrior from beyond the stars. If left unaddressed, this new power could shift the balance of the entire galaxy. It could destabilize both Jedi and Sith plans before either had the opportunity to adapt. This being had arrived without warning, without allegiance, and without the limitations of the Force that bound all other life. Piccolo, unaware of these analyses, continued his exploration. But even he felt something tightening around the world, like a hand closing into a fist. Patrol routes increased, satellites changed orientation, communications traveled at a rapid pace through networks of military channels. The galaxy's powers were converging. They did not know what he was. They did not know where he came from, but they knew he mattered. And Piccolo sensed their attention. He stopped walking and looked up at the sky again, sensing not energy signatures, but intent. Something was coming for him, something shaped by authority, fear, and ambition. He did not plan to hide from it. He turned toward the capital. A new chapter in the fate of the galaxy had begun.
Piccolo moved through Naboo's capital with the quiet certainty of a being who had seen worlds rise and fall long before the Galactic Empire was conceived. His steps were measured, steady, and almost ceremonial. He did not conceal himself anymore. The time for silent observation had passed. The galaxy had already begun tightening its net around him, and Piccolo understood that once a militaristic power sensed an unknown force within its domain, confrontation was inevitable. He chose to face it on his own terms. Naboo's cityscape shimmered beneath the rising sun, its domed architecture reflecting the calm elegance of a society not yet aware of the storm that approached. The citizens went about their routines with a serene confidence built upon years of peace following their liberation from the Trade Federation. They believed their world safe. They believed the Empire's distant rule was firm enough to prevent chaos, yet loose enough not to interfere in their daily lives. They believed themselves orderly, stable, and untouched by the darker tides sweeping across the galaxy. Piccolo sensed the fragility behind that illusion. Peace built on political arrangements was always thin. He had witnessed similar structures crumble on Earth when stronger forces arrived to challenge them. To him, Naboo felt like a vase perched on the edge of a table. Beautiful, refined, but one sudden push away from shattering. As he walked deeper into the capital, he could feel the atmosphere shift, not physically, but perceptually, like the subtle silence before battle. Patrol droids scanned rooftops, officers repositioned speeders into defensive lines. Communication towers pulsed with alerts. These were not simple security measures. These were preparations for an incoming threat whose nature remained unknown. Far above the city, the skies tore open with the signature arrival of Imperial power. A star destroyer descended from orbit, its colossal frame eclipsing the sunlight as it cut through the atmosphere. Its engines roared like an artificial storm, shaking windows and sending birds scattering in anxious flocks. The people of Naboo paused to watch it, uneasy but accustomed to the Empire's displays of strength. What they did not know was that this ship did not arrive for political oversight or ceremonial inspection. It arrived because of Piccolo. Aboard the Star Destroyer, specialized divisions began mobilizing. Officers pored over sensor logs, attempting to triangulate the energy reading that had triggered the Emperor's concern. Elite stormtroopers prepared containment measures reserved for unknown entities. Probe droids awaited deployment, programmed to record every movement and biological detail of the target. In a sealed chamber at the heart of the ship, Darth Vader observed the data streams with cold precision. He had felt Piccolo's presence expanding across Naboo. It was not force-born, yet it spread with a weight that rivaled force signatures from powerful masters. It carried intensity without corruption, control without serenity, and potential without loyalty. Darth Vader understood the implications. A warrior of this magnitude could not be allowed to roam freely. The Empire did not tolerate unpredictability. Any being who could shake the fabric of the Force simply by existing was a threat to order, authority, and the Emperor's vision.
While the Empire executed its protocols, Piccolo stood at the edge of the central plaza, gazing up at the descending war machine. To him, the Star Destroyer was impressive only in scale. He had seen structures far larger, fought enemies far stronger, and witnessed forces far more destructive. Yet this machine represented something genuinely dangerous. Not because of its firepower, but because of the bureaucratic and ideological machinery behind it. The Empire commanded legions, fleets, and entire star systems. Its strength lay in its unity and obedience, and unlike the chaotic threats Piccolo once faced on Earth, this power operated with precision. As the destroyer settled into position, smaller vessels detached from its hangars, spiraling downward like metal vultures. They formed tactical rings around the city, each one equipped with sensors calibrated to lock on to biological anomalies. They sensed him instantly. Inside Imperial command posts scattered across the capital, alarms blared as consoles lit up with readings that defied classification. Power signatures rose above known humanoid thresholds. Vital signs indicated resilience beyond any cataloged species. In one moment, Piccolo became the most important target in the sector. Stormtroopers converged on the plaza from multiple directions. The citizens of Naboo retreated indoors, unsure of what threat required such an overwhelming response. But Piccolo remained still, watching with calm detachment. He understood the dynamic unfolding. When a power structure encountered an unknown element, its first instinct was containment. That instinct was universal, whether among empires, armies, or ambitious individuals. Piccolo's cloak fluttered slightly as he shifted his stance, preparing not for battle, but for inevitability. The Empire's approach did not frighten him. It intrigued him. He had trained under masters who taught discipline through hardship. He had fought enemies whose mere presence threatened planetary extinction. The soldiers now forming a perimeter around him were not dangerous. They were simply executing their orders. But the order behind them, that was another matter entirely. As the troops advanced, probe droids hovered overhead, analyzing Piccolo's physiology. Their data streams filled with anomalies. Bone density unmatched by any known species. Muscle structure capable of exerting staggering force. Internal energy readings that spiked far above baseline. These readings transmitted directly to the Star Destroyer, where Vader reviewed them with growing certainty. This being was not a native of the galaxy. That made him valuable. That made him threatening. That made him a priority. On Naboo's surface, the military cordon tightened. The plaza fell completely silent. Every trooper held position, awaiting the signal to strike or detain. Officers assessed Piccolo's stance, trying to determine weakness. There was none. He stood as if he were not surrounded at all. Piccolo's mind processed the formation around him. The Empire believed control equaled supremacy. It believed fear stabilized power. Piccolo saw through this immediately. The troopers moved with perfect synchronization, but their strength depended entirely on coordination. If the structure failed, the individual units offered no real challenge. This was a machine of war, not a collection of warriors. For a moment, everything in the city seemed to stop, as if the galaxy itself held its breath. Then something shifted high above the planet. A presence. Cold. Dominant. Towering.
Piccolo felt it immediately. Darth Vader was descending. The Empire was not sending soldiers to confront the anomaly. It was sending its executioner. The shadow that would define Piccolo's role in this galaxy was now approaching, and the galaxy itself would never be the same.
The atmosphere above Naboo thickened as Darth Vader's shuttle descended through the clouds. The air itself seemed to recoil from the weight of his presence. Citizens who had not yet reached shelter felt a chill pass through them, a cold that sank not into their skin, but into their instincts. Vader's arrival always carried that effect, a pressure born not of the Force alone, but of the legacy he dragged behind him like a shadow. Wherever he walked, he brought with him the residue of battles, broken wills, and futures reshaped by fear. Piccolo sensed the descent long before the shuttle came into view. The disturbance was unmistakable. This presence was unlike the soldiers surrounding him. It was not bound by the rigid thought patterns of militaristic discipline. It was shaped by pain and power, forged in conflict and sharpened by a relentless internal war. Vader's aura pressed outward like a gravity well, bending the emotional landscape of the world around him. Piccolo recognized that kind of intensity, not through the Force, but through experience. He had felt similar resolve from warriors who carried entire histories of suffering on their shoulders. This newcomer was not merely a commander. He was a vessel of transformation, destructive, focused, and driven by a purpose that transcended personal survival. When the shuttle finally appeared, slicing through the sky with controlled precision, the entire Imperial formation adjusted. Troopers repositioned, officers stepped aside, probe droids widened their observation arcs. Every unit moved into a configuration designed to signal the arrival of absolute authority. The vessel landed with a synchronized hiss, atmospheric pressure stabilizing around it. The ramp extended with the same mechanical certainty that governed the Empire's rule over the galaxy. Darth Vader stepped into the light. His silhouette alone caused a shift in the crowd of soldiers. Even from a distance, his presence radiated command. The black armor, the cape flowing with deliberate control, the steady rhythm of the respirator, all of it formed a portrait of a being whose life had been sculpted into an instrument of domination. Troopers felt reassured, yet unsettled. Officers steadied themselves. Even the probe droids drifted slightly back, recalibrating around the surge of dark power emanating from him. Piccolo watched silently. His stance did not change. His focus did not waver. He had faced monstrous energies, celestial tyrants, and warrior gods far beyond the scale of most beings. Yet this presence was different. Not stronger, not weaker, different. It was the presence of someone who had surrendered parts of himself to an ideology so absolute that it consumed his identity. Vader was the embodiment of control through fear. Piccolo understood that controlling others often stemmed from failing to control oneself. But he made no judgment. He simply observed. Vader began moving toward the plaza. Each step carried the weight of his mechanical limbs, the echo of his respirator, and the dark certainty of someone who believed destiny bent to his will. Imperial forces on the ground formed pathways for him, widening the perimeter around Piccolo.
The geometry of the formation shifted. Soldiers no longer positioned themselves merely to contain or confront. They formed a stage, a focal point, a battlefield without spoken terms. Above them, the Star Destroyer adjusted its position to oversee the unfolding confrontation. It hovered like a colossal judge watching the proceedings, with its underside illuminated by rows of lights that cast long shadows across the city. The pressure of the moment intensified. Piccolo and Vader now stood aligned, only separated by a controlled distance meant to reflect both caution and strategy. The silence between them carried more weight than any spoken words could have. Vader's sensors analyzed the Namekian's physiology. The readings returned in unstable bursts. Energy levels fluctuated beyond calibrated expectations. Biological scans produced contradictory results. Piccolo's body defied classification.
Vader shifted slightly, assessing the Namekian not as an anomaly, but as a potential adversary. In his calculations, every being fell into one of three categories: controllable, useful, or dangerous. As he evaluated Piccolo's stillness, posture, and the calm composure with which he faced a force the galaxy feared, it became clear this being belonged in the third category. Stormtroopers tightened their grips on their weapons. Officers signaled for orbital support to stand ready. The entire Imperial machine leaned forward, prepared for the slightest catalyst that might ignite conflict. But Piccolo's presence remained composed. He did not radiate aggression. He did not project fear. He simply existed with a self-contained equilibrium that unsettled the Empire. In a galaxy built on divisions of power, his neutrality was unnerving. Vader raised a hand slightly, signaling his forces to maintain their positions. The Namekian's energy signature pulsed with an intensity that suggested strength beyond conventional measurement. This was not a creature that could be subjugated by standard means. The Emperor would need more information. The Empire would need a strategy. As Vader's presence pressed outward, Piccolo felt the dark energy swirling around him. It was not ki. It was something deeper, a binding force rooted not in physical strength, but in spiritual domination. Piccolo analyzed it without fear. His training under Earth's greatest masters, his battles against cosmic threats, and his own evolution as a warrior prepared him for energies more destructive than this. What fascinated him was not the danger, but the structure. The Force was a living system. It branched, pulsed, and reacted to circumstances. Vader was its distortion, a living wound that fed on control. This world was shaped not only by governments and armies, but by currents of emotional power that intertwined with physical reality. Earth had nothing comparable. As the two figures faced one another, something deeper occurred, something the watching troops could not perceive. The galaxy registered the moment. Two forces, one born of ki and discipline, the other forged in the furnace of the dark side, stood opposite one another. The meeting created a clash of influences, subtle yet monumental. The Force trembled. Ki resonated, reality adjusted. The galaxy did not yet know it, but this was the turning point. The intersection between Piccolo's path and Vader's legacy would shape events that neither the Jedi nor the Sith had foreseen. Then, as abruptly as he arrived, Vader turned, signaling the end of the immediate confrontation. It was not retreat, it was strategy. He would not engage without preparation.
The Emperor needed to be informed. Plans needed to be revised. This was no mere anomaly. This was a new variable that could reshape the balance of power. Piccolo watched the troops disperse, the formations realign, the Star Destroyer lift. He understood the message. The Empire had taken his measure. Now, the galaxy would respond.
Vader's return to the Star Destroyer did not release the tension suffocating Naboo. If anything, it deepened it. The Empire's forces continued circling the planet, their formations tighter and more calculated than before. Officers scrutinized every data reading collected from Piccolo, comparing it to archives of known species, anomalies, and force-sensitive beings. Each attempt only widened the gap of understanding. Nothing matched the Namekian. The Emperor received the report within minutes. Deep within the darkened chambers of his throne room on Coruscant, he examined the fluctuations, the energy spikes, and the biological impossibilities. The recordings of Piccolo standing unchanged in the plaza, surrounded by an entire regiment, captured his interest. This was a being who possessed immense power, yet lacked the emotional instability common to potential force wielders. He did not radiate fear. He did not radiate hatred. He did not radiate anything that could be converted. This made him an outlier. And outliers attracted the Emperor's attention. Across the galaxy, political systems, military alliances, and strategic plans rested on predictable behavior. Every major power behaved in accordance with fear, belief, or ambition. But Piccolo defied such categories. He acted from a place of internal completeness, shaped by a warrior lineage that had no roots in this galaxy. If he could be controlled, he could become the Empire's strongest asset. If he could not, he represented a threat more dangerous than any surviving Jedi. The Emperor never tolerated uncertainty. He issued a directive. Piccolo would be captured, studied, and, if possible, converted. If conversion failed, elimination would be required. But before any drastic measures, the Empire needed to test his limits. On Naboo, Piccolo continued to observe the changes unfolding around him. The citizens had retreated behind darkened doors. Patrol routes intensified. Orbital scanners swept the planet in overlapping layers. Piccolo sensed the pattern forming, not chaotic, but highly organized. This was not a simple containment strategy. It was preparation. The Empire was shaping the battlefield, assembling pieces for an evaluation of his capabilities. He recognized the tactic. It was the same strategy used by powerful adversaries who attempted to dissect the strengths of their opponents before deciding whether to recruit or eliminate them. Here, the logic was the same, though the scale was different. The Empire applied its scientific and military resources with a thoroughness few worlds could match. He did not respond aggressively. Instead, he watched as a new wave of machines descended from the sky, large quadrupedal walkers equipped with reinforced armor and heavy cannons. They moved with the slow, deliberate certainty of beasts designed for intimidation. Behind them, aerial units circled, ensuring no escape routes remained unseen. But Piccolo never intended to flee. He stood calmly as the walkers' cannons activated. Energy built along their conduits, humming with mechanical intensity. Sensors on every unit locked onto him, feeding continuous streams of information to command ships above. The Empire waited to see if he would engage. He did not. This unsettled them. They increased their pressure. Walkers advanced. Aerial units dropped closer. Droids began forming tighter configurations. Still, Piccolo remained still, analyzing each motion. The Empire changed tactics. A containment field activated around him, a shimmering barrier created by a network of pylons. It extended upward like a transparent dome, crackling with destabilizing energy. This field was designed to suppress mobility, absorb kinetic force, and interfere with energy projection. To the Empire, it was a perfect test scenario. To Piccolo, it was merely an environment. The field closed with a deep resonance that vibrated through the surrounding terrain. Observers aboard the Star Destroyer watched closely, expecting a reaction. They had seen beings panic, rage, or flee under similar circumstances. Piccolo simply breathed, his posture undisturbed. Then, with the composure of someone evaluating a training obstacle, he raised one hand and lightly touched the barrier. The dome trembled. Sensors erupted into chaos. The field fluctuated wildly, unable to stabilize against the foreign energy pulsing through it. Engineers scrambled to reinforce the power conduits. The barrier flickered, then dissolved completely, collapsing like a shattered shell. Piccolo had not struck it. He had merely disrupted it through contact. Imperial officers fell into instant disbelief. Within seconds, they escalated to their next protocol, the release of the Dark Troopers. These units, constructed of reinforced alloys and powered by advanced combat processes, were unleashed from atmospheric carriers. They descended with metallic precision, forming a grid of armored enforcers around the Namekian. Each unit represented one of the Empire's greatest advancements in infantry technology. Piccolo observed their coordinated march, their predictive combat algorithms, and the cold efficiency of their movements. He understood the purpose. The Empire needed to know if brute force could overwhelm him. It could not. The troopers advanced, but Piccolo did not attack. Instead, he analyzed their approach, their timing, and their mechanical synchronization. Ki pulsed subtly through his frame, effortlessly overpowering their scanning systems. The closer they moved, the clearer it became that they had no way to measure what he truly was. But before they reached him, every unit froze. A signal echoed across the battlefield. The Emperor had arrived, not physically, but through the dark currents of the galaxy. Palpatine's presence saturated the air, a silent manifestation of authority that pressed down upon soldiers, machines, and even the landscape. The Empire's greatest power had now entered the confrontation, not to attack, but to evaluate. Piccolo sensed him immediately. An immense well of darkness, cold, calculating, ancient. It curled around the planet like a shadow stretching across the stars. The moment signaled the next stage of the Empire's plan, and Piccolo's role in the galaxy was about to change forever. The confrontation on Naboo marked more than a single encounter between a stranger and an empire. It marked the introduction of a force the galaxy had never conceived of. A warrior shaped not by the Force, not by ancient orders, not by political authority, but by a discipline rooted in worlds beyond the reach of hyperspace lanes and star charts. Piccolo's existence defied the binary narrative that had defined the galaxy for generations. He was neither Jedi nor Sith, neither ally nor conqueror, neither rebel nor imperial asset. His neutrality carried weight, and that weight unsettled every structure built upon predictable divides. As the Emperor's presence settled over the planet like a dark lens studying its subject, the galaxy shifted around the Namekian. Systems at the fringes of imperial control felt disturbances ripple through the Force. Hidden Jedi sensed a foreign presence that lacked corruption yet carried unimaginable strength. The Sith interpreted his arrival as a potential weapon or a threat depending on how he responded to their influence. Even ordinary civilians, unaware of the grand struggle between light and dark, experienced subtle changes as the Empire intensified its military posture, preparing for conflicts not yet visible. Piccolo understood none of these political dynamics, yet his instinct told him the truth. The galaxy operated on a delicate balance. Its wars, histories, and destinies were shaped not only by power, but by the fear of losing it. The Empire reacted to him as any dominant force would react to uncertainty. They saw in him a possibility capable of undermining the order they imposed. But Piccolo held no desire to disrupt their structure. His purpose remained inward: observation, learning, understanding the rhythm of this new world. Still, the galaxy would not allow neutrality to endure. Forces of darkness would attempt control. Forces of light would seek alliance. Entire factions would debate whether he represented salvation or catastrophe. The Emperor already prepared his next move, calculating how to use Piccolo's existence to reshape the balance of power. Vader, silent but contemplative, recognized a challenge unlike any he had faced. And across the stars, destiny shifted, rewriting paths that had once seemed fixed. Piccolo's landing in the Star Wars galaxy did not begin with a battle. It began with a tremor, one that would echo through empires, rebellions, and the very fabric of the Force itself. His presence promised transformation, whether the galaxy desired it or not. The age of the Namekian had begun.